The map of Ukraine hasn't changed much in years, leading most viewers to assume the war is a stalemate where neither side can win. But realpolitik suggests otherwise. Stalemate isn't an accident, it's the new strategy for both Moscow and Washington. Russia has shifted from a blitzkrieg aimed at regime change into a calculated war of economic attrition, betting that time will break Ukraine regardless of battlefield losses. Meanwhile, the West is no longer fighting just to save Kiev's borders, but to degrade Russia as a long-term peer competitor. The question isn't who captured more land, it is, who can afford to bleed out first? To understand why the front lines look frozen despite years of combat, we must discard the assumption that military progress equals territorial acquisition alone. In modern great power competition, time itself becomes a weapon. As of September 2025, the conflict has evolved into a protracted war lasting 3.5 years. Vladimir Putin's core objectives remain unchanged regarding subjugating Ukraine and preventing NATO alignment, but his method has shifted fundamentally. Moscow now intends to win through exhaustion rather than rapid conquest, preparing for what analysts call a forever war at lower intensities designed to destabilize Kyiv over time while waiting out Western political cycles. The visual evidence of this shift is stark when you look beyond the headlines and examine the actual metrics on the ground. Despite claiming strategic initiative since early 2024, Russian military performance has been remarkably sluggish. Forces have advanced an average rate of only 15 to 70 meters per day during their most prominent offensives in key sectors like Pokrovsk and Kharkiv. To put that into perspective for a general audience familiar with historical conflicts, this pace is slower than the Battle of the Somme during World War I, which averaged roughly 80 meters per day at its height. Since early 2024, Russia has gained less than 1.5% of Ukrainian territory, approximately 5,000 square kilometers. This represents a marginal gain compared to the initial invasion phase where they seized vast swaths in mere weeks. The lack of movement on the map is not a sign of indecision but a feature of a strategy that prioritizes grinding down an opponent over capturing cities quickly. Quick resource note: I keep a curated set of Amazon search links in the description for books, gear, and tools relevant to this channel's topics. Some are affiliate links, so I may earn a commission at no extra cost to you. Please consider supporting the channel by using those links if you find something useful. However, this calculus relies on resources that Moscow may be running out of faster than Kyiv can deplete them. The attrition is coming at catastrophic costs for Russia in both human capital and economic stability. Russian forces have incurred approximately 1.2 million total casualties since February 2022, with estimates suggesting 325,000 soldiers killed in action alone. This represents the highest losses for any nation since World War II and places immense strain on a society that was not prepared for such sustained mobilization. Concurrently, the war economy is beginning to fracture under its own weight. Manufacturing output is declining, inflation remains high, and economic growth slowed to just 0.6% in 2025 as expenditures mounted. The state can sustain this level of bleeding only if it believes the cost will eventually force a surrender or collapse on the other side before their own system buckles under the pressure. This brings us to the critical pivot. Why does the West continue to supply weapons and funding when there is no clear path to total victory? The Western strategic calculus has also evolved significantly from the early days of the invasion. While initially focused narrowly on defending Ukrainian sovereignty, the primary objective now includes degrading Russia as a peer competitor for decades rather than months. This shift means supporting Ukraine not necessarily to achieve immediate liberation or rapid territorial recovery in every sector, but to force Moscow into a position of long-term weakness and economic stagnation that outlasts its current capacity for war. Every day of fighting without a decisive peace deal serves the strategic goal of permanently weakening a rival superpower, turning Ukraine into an active drain on Russian resources that prevents them from projecting power elsewhere in Europe or Asia. The incentive structure now dictates that both sides are playing a game where winning looks like losing quickly but surviving longer is better than dying fast. For Russia, it is a gamble to see if they can bleed Ukraine dry before their own economy collapses or Western support wavers due to domestic political shifts. The United States spent 9 months attempting to end the fighting through negotiations in 2024, and Europeans have spent over a year discussing potential peacekeeping forces, yet neither side has moved toward a comprehensive settlement. This hesitation is not paralysis. It reflects a mutual recognition that a premature freeze of the conflict could allow Russia to recover faster than the current attrition allows. The West tolerates high costs because the alternative, a rapid ceasefire that leaves Russian military power intact, poses a greater long-term threat to global security architecture. For Ukraine, survival has become synonymous with strategic endurance rather than territorial expansion in every direction. They are fighting not just for their own sovereignty, but as the primary instrument of Western containment policy against Russia. The logic is clear. If Moscow cannot achieve its maximalist goals through force without destroying itself economically and demographically, then the status quo becomes a form of victory for Kyiv's allies. This reframes why you aren't seeing massive territorial shifts on the news anymore. The stalemate is actually a feature, not a bug. It allows both sides to measure their endurance against each other while external actors manage the geopolitical fallout. Ultimately, this conflict demonstrates how modern warfare has shifted from seeking decisive battles to managing long-term resource depletion. The map of Ukraine may look static compared to 2022, but underneath that frozen surface lies a dynamic struggle for survival and strategic dominance. For Moscow, it is a test of whether their economy can withstand the pressure of sanctions and war spending indefinitely. For Washington, it is a test of whether allies will maintain unity long enough to see Russia permanently diminished as a global threat. The question remains, who can afford to bleed out first? As we move forward into 2026, the answer will determine not just Ukraine's future borders, but the balance of power in Europe for generations to come. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I am a one-person team working hard to make each video better than the last. Subscribe if you found value. It is the best way to show support. Drop a comment with your biggest takeaway. See you in the next video.